Well, good afternoon. This is Micah Young with Micah Young Podcast. Well, thank you so much for listening or viewing today. We always appreciate your participation and your involvement, and just can't tell you how thankful we are that you're interested in what we're sharing, and pray that it's being a blessing to you, that the Lord's speaking to your heart through all of it. Today, I want to share with you something that I believe to be one of the greatest hindrances in our being successful in knowing God. And it's an issue that we don't talk about much, but it's an issue that permeates our life. It affects everything we do, usually without us being consciously aware of its influence. And I want to share the lyrics to a song with you. I would publish it, but I don't know if there are copyright issues with that. So I'm just going to tell you who wrote it and encourage you to go on to YouTube, maybe on Facebook, but I know it's on YouTube, and listen to it. And it's a song from back in the 70s, 80s, somewhere around in there. And as we study this topic and as we ask the Lord to speak to us about it, I want to encourage you to listen to that song. And there'll be a place in there actually for you to put your name, and it'll be pretty obvious whenever you hear it. But I want to just read the lyrics to you. The name of the song is called Adam, Where Are You? And it's by Don Francisco. And the lyrics go something like this. Unashamed and naked in a garden that has never seen the rain. Rulers of a kingdom full of joy, never marred by any pain. The morning all around them seems to celebrate the life they've just begun. And in the majesty of innocence, the king and queen come walking through the sun. But the master of deception now begins with his dissection of the word. And with all his craft and subtlety, the serpent twists the simple truths they've heard. While hanging in the balance is a world that has been placed at their command. And all their unborn children die as both of them bow down to Satan's hand. And just before the evening, in the cool of the day, they hear the voice of God as he is walking. And they can't abide his presence, so they try to hide away. But still they hear the sound as he is calling. Adam, Adam, where are you? Adam, Adam, where are you? Adam, Adam, where are you? In the stifling heat of summer now, the gardener and his wife are in the field. And it seems that thorns and thistles are the only crop his struggles ever yield. He eats his meals in sorrow till he sinks into the dust from whence he came. But all down through the ages, he can hear his maker calling out his name. Adam, Adam, where are you? Adam, Adam, where are you? And though the curse has long been broken, Adam's sons are still the prisoners of their fears, rushing helter-skelter to destruction with their fingers in their ears. While the Father's voice is calling with an urgency I've never heard before, won't you come in from the darkness now before it's time to finally close the door? Adam, Adam, where are you? Adam, Adam, where are you? Adam, Adam, I love you. Pretty powerful song. Much more powerful when you hear it. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that song, and every time it just quickens something in my heart. The verse that stands out to me is the last verse when it says, the curse has long been broken, but Adam's sons are still the prisoner of their fears, rushing helter-skelter to destruction with their fingers in the ears. If you've ever read Pilgrim's Progress, that last line is a play on a setting from that book. The main character, Christian, is running from the city of destruction. And he had to put his fingers in his ears to keep from hearing the cries of the people that chose to stay. But here he reverses it and says, people are running towards destruction with their fingers in their ears So they cannot hear God calling. They cannot hear God reaching out to them. Now, what I'm going to share with you is going to come primarily out of Genesis 1, 2, and 3. What an awesome 3 chapters this is. And you'll notice some things as you look at that. It's how God, or what God did as he created. And each time when God created the light, let there be light, and the firmament, and the lights by day and the lights by night, and all of the creatures. And each time after each expression of creation, his assessment of what he had done was, it is good. It is good. Every single time as he created, whenever he got through with that, his perspective of what he had done was, it is good. But then he created Adam. And his comment after he created Adam was, it is not good. First, not good in Scripture. And his comment was, it is not good that Adam be alone. And so then he created Eve. And his assessment after creating Eve and bringing the two together was, everything that he saw was, it was very good. And he says, in the evening and the morning, the 6th day. So God's assessment, God's perspective of everything that it was, it is very good. Then in Genesis 2, we find a more detailed account of what happened. We find God bringing Eve to Adam and him being overwhelmed by her beauty. And in verse 23, he says, this is now bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. Now, somehow, that had to be romantic. I don't get it. I don't understand it. But he figured somehow that'd click with Eve, and that was his assessment. This is now, this before me, this that God has created is now bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh, and she could be called woman because she was taken out of man. God said, for this reason, a man shall leave his mother and father and be joined to his wife, and they shall become flesh. And God's assessment of what he had done, God's assessment of that coming together of his creation was, this is very good. This is very good what I've done. And then in chapter 2, verse 25, he says about Adam and Eve, and the man and his wife were naked and were not ashamed. Now that's a more specific description of very good, because he defines it a little clearer. He says, yes, it was very good. And here's Adam and Eve. They were naked and they were not ashamed. I think it's noteworthy that God used that phrase. They were not ashamed. Now, bear in mind, up until this point, all Adam had to assess his world, including himself, was by what God had to say about it. That's the only perspective he had at this point in time. And God said, it's all very good. He didn't know anything about how creation functioned. He didn't know anything about what he was doing or what was really taking place. But I'm very sure that he heard God say, there is no shame here. You guys are naked and not ashamed. In Adam's heart, there was a sense that even though he was completely vulnerable and open and transparent, he was not ashamed. God's perspective is all that he had to go on. Now, that should really speak to us, because I tell you, folks, that's not a bad place to be. If all we have is God's perspective, we're in good shape. We are bombarded with perspectives. We have created our own perspectives. But if I have God's perspective, there is nothing better than that. And if you don't have that, you really don't have anything. And then as in Genesis 3, there's another perspective that enters the picture with the serpent and the dialogue with Eve and the serpent. And he presents a perspective that causes Adam and Eve to question God, to question who God was, to question God's goodness, to question God's love, to question what God had done, and to question God's assessment. He comes and he says, look, you're not enough. God's withholding the best from you. And if you will eat of this tree, you'll have all of that because God didn't tell you the truth about it. And in doing that, he's questioning God. He's questioning who God was. Is he really a good God that he would withhold that from us? He's questioning God's love. He's questioning what God had done. Is it really very good? And he's questioned God's perspective. And Adam embraces it. Eve first, and then Adam. And in verse 7, we find the results of embracing that perspective. And the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together, and they sewed loin covers. I submit to you that a result of embracing that other perspective, other than God's perspective, everything changed. Instead of being naked and unashamed, I believe now they were naked and ashamed. They were ashamed of who they were. They were ashamed of their condition. They were ashamed of having been exposed. And they were ashamed of what they had done. They were ashamed. They were all of a sudden aware of something lacking about themselves that had not been present before, and it needed to be covered up. It needed to be protected. It needed to be hidden. This is the element I want us to share about, the issue of shame. Now, I've shared this before and had people's response, and here's the question I ask them. What is shame to you? How would you describe shame? How would you define shame? Well, let me tell you right off the bat, it's bigger than you think. Some of the things that we have lived with for years and have become very familiar with, but didn't know what it was, finds its source in shame that we bear. How would you describe shame? Someone said, well, part of shame is embarrassment. Embarrassment is that fear that something lacking in me is about to be exposed. Embarrassment is that fear that something inadequate in me or lacking in me is about to be exposed. It may be the way I look. It might be my education. It may be my intellect. It may be the possessions that I have. It may be my heritage, the lineage of the family that I am part of and that I come from. And it certainly may be from my past. But there's that fear that something inside of me, something is lacking, and it is about to be exposed, not only for the world to see, but maybe even possibly for God to see. There's a sense of worthlessness. I have no value. I've done this so many times. I have tried to get through it. I can't make it. I am just not of any benefit to anyone. In some cases, it's called self-hatred, because that shame is there, and that sense of inadequacy and that sense of loss and that sense of less than. There's this sense of just self-hatred. And I want to share something with you. I saw this the other day. It says, children that are raised under constant criticism don't grow up to hate the criticizer. They grow up to hate themselves. And what a picture of shame. Many of us grew up in an environment where there was not love, there was not affirmation, we didn't have an inviting parent, and there was this sense of shame put on us. There was this sense of you're less than, you're not as important, you're not, maybe as a sibling or maybe it's just in general. But there's that self-hatred, that self-loathing that comes from that. Another expression is guilt. And this can be even twofold. It may be things that we've done, sins that we've committed, acts that we've participated in, something that we've done in the past, and we bear the guilt of that and then the shame of that. But it can also be things that were done to us. We may have been innocent in a scenario where I was violated, where something happened to me that destroyed my self-worth, that destroyed my value. And there's a guilt and a shame that I bear about that. And I was innocent in the circumstance, but it was something that was done to us. And I want to tell you, where children are concerned, that's a real possibility. That there was abuse maybe, or there was molestation, or things that were done, and they were completely innocent in the situation. But because of that, there is this sense of shame that they carry with them everywhere they go and everything that they do. Now, another thing is, it's anything that causes me to feel unaccepted. That can be shame. I just don't feel accepted because of fill in the blank. It may be there's a self-centeredness. I'm just aware of myself. And that self-awareness, that self-centeredness, not self-awareness, but self-centeredness, is a protection so that no one will see the shame and that I can protect myself, that I'm never shamed or embarrassed again. All of these are great expressions of it. But I want to give you a working definition of shame. And this is just probably not in the dictionary, but it's just a definition that helps me and communicate what shame is. Shame, a prevailing sense of failure, inferiority, exposure, condemnation, guilt, inadequacy, discontentment, brokenness, humiliation, disgrace, sense of having been damaged, unworthiness, helplessness, worthlessness, embarrassment, and insecurity. All of these can make up that definition of shame. And we may not experience all of them, but because of shame, we're going to experience some of them. You can bet on that. It is a prevailing sense. The intensity level of shame will rise and fall. The intensity will ebb and flow. At times it'll be intense and overwhelming, and at times it'll be less evident. I've got a handle on it. I got this. I can pull this off, but it's always there. It's a constant companion. Sometimes it's shouting, and sometimes it's whispering. Sometimes it's demanding, but more often it's simply suggesting. It can come cloaked in any of these disguises, but the source is the shame. Now, here's the thing about shame. Shame, when it comes, it attaches itself to and identifies itself with me as a person. It attaches itself to my identity. It attaches myself to who I believe myself to be. It attaches myself to my person. It goes something like this. I am a failure. I am less than. I am irresponsible. I am naked. I am condemned. I am guilty. I am inadequate. I am discontent. I am broken. I am humiliated. It's not just that my behavior or my performance has come up short, but it attaches itself to me as a person, my identity. It makes the case that this is who I am. It is a sense that I am less than. It's the feeling, somebody says it's the feeling of being unclean or dirty. The word that I heard with it is it's like a spiritual tar. It just covers us. It's just a yuck that just seems to be like a lion in the bushes, constantly waiting to devour us and to coming to attack us. It's that sense that there's something significant wrong or lacking with me. I just don't measure up. Now, fear always attaches itself to shame. Notice here in Adam's account, where are you? God said. And Adam said, I heard the voice. That word sound is literally voice. I heard the voice of you in the garden, and I was afraid. Fear always attaches itself to shame. So it may not be that I am a failure. It may be that I am anticipating something happening that I feel like a failure. And it's like, he may be calling, but what's going to happen when I go? It may be that, yeah, I know God wants me to come back, but what's going to happen to me if I go back? There'll be judgment, and condemnation, and scolding, and bring up the past and make me feel terrible about myself. So why in the world would I want to go back to that? But there's this fear that says, there's this fear that just says, I'm afraid that I'm going to be a failure. I'm afraid that I'm going to be embarrassed. I'm afraid of being exposed. I'm afraid of being condemned or guilty or discontent or broken or damaged or unworthy or rejected. If you'll listen to conversation around you during a day, you will be amazed at how many times the word phrase is used. Well, I was afraid, or I'm afraid of this. It may not be that it's present now, but it may be that I am afraid of this happening to my life. I'm afraid of these things. I've tasted that bitter fruit of shame, and I'm afraid that is going to happen again. That is being motivated by shame. Shame can be intense, as in an after obvious failure or an obvious exposure. I failed at something, therefore I am a failure. Shame overwhelms me. Had I just done this, or had I just been this, had I just, tried this, then shame comes with intensity and overwhelms me. Something about us is revealed or uncovered. Someone lifts the fig leaf, and I am exposed. My guard is down, and embarrassment captures me. And I am afraid that some of that is going to happen. Or it can be as subtle as in our daily life. Now, I want to just pause there, stop there, and I want you to just take what we've shared and ask the Father to just speak to you about any of it. Is any of this relevant to your heart? And I know we're taking this podcast and the next one, and we're describing it, and we're trying to make it relevant so that we can identify it. But and we're going to get to the answer to shame. But I want to encourage you. I don't share this just to hear myself talk, and I know there's nothing more overrated in the church today than preaching. But I share because I pray that you will take this and allow the Father to incorporate it in your life. So I pray you do that, and we'll pick up from the next one. And if you like what you hear, just click like or subscribe, and you'll get a notification. And we'll take up with this on the next one. The Lord bless you.